The cry in the alley. The night was cold. The wind blew through the quiet streets of New Terra City. Most people had gone to sleep. But Jake Walker was still walking home, holding a paper bag of groceries. His work shift at the machine yard had ended late. His back hurt. His legs were tired. He passed an alleyway near the old cargo station. It was dark, full of broken crates and trash. Then he stopped. He heard something. It was soft, barely a whisper. A sound like crying. Jake turned his head and looked into the alley. For a second, there was only silence, but then, again, a small sob. Faint, scared, like a child. Jake walked, slowly toward the sound. "Hello?" he called out. "Is someone there?" No answer. Just a sniffle. He moved past a pile of metal scraps, and that's when he saw her. A small figure, crouched behind an old box. She was shaking. Her skin was a pale purple blue with strange glowing lines across her arms. Her hair was long and silver, tangled and dirty. Her eyes were too big for her face and glowed faintly in the dark. She looked no older than 6 or 7. An alien girl. All alone. Jake dropped to one knee, careful not to scare her. "Hey," he said softly. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." She looked at him but didn't speak. Her body trembled harder. Jake noticed her bare feet were scraped and bruised. Her thin dress was torn. She looked half-starved. Her small hands clutched something tightly, an old cloth doll with one eye missing. "You're cold," Jake said. He took off his jacket and held it out. "Take this." She stared at it for a long moment. Then, slowly, with shaking fingers, she reached out. Jake helped her put it on. It was too big for her, but she hugged it close. "What's your name?" he asked. She didn't answer, just kept looking at him with wide, wet eyes. Jake sighed. "All right. You hungry?" That, she seemed to understand. Her little head gave a tiny nod. Jake opened the grocery bag and pulled out a wrapped sandwich. He unwrapped it and held it toward her. She hesitated, then grabbed it and started eating fast, like she hadn't eaten in days. Jake watched in silence. He didn't know where she came from or why she was alone, but leaving her here? That wasn't an option. He stood up. "You can come with me, all right? Just for the night. I've got a warm place. You'll be safe there." The girl froze, unsure. Jake held out his hand. "I promise." Very slowly. She stood. Her legs were weak. She walked forward and took his hand. Her little fingers gripped his tightly. Jake led her through the quiet streets back to his small home on the edge of town. He turned on the lights, guided her to the couch, and brought her a blanket. He heated up some soup. She sat there, eyes wide, taking in everything, the lights, the couch, the pictures on the wall, like it was her first time seeing a home. She ate more when he handed her a bowl. Jake sat down nearby, still unsure what to say. "You don't talk much, huh?" She looked at him, then slowly leaned against his arm. It caught Jake by surprise. But he let her stay there. "Okay," he whispered. "You can stay tonight." He didn't sleep much. He stayed in the chair nearby, watching her rest curled up on the couch, holding his jacket like it was the only safe thing in the world. But in the morning, she was gone. No sign. The door was left open. The jacket lay folded on the couch. Jake stood there staring at the empty room. He didn't even know her name, but something in his heart told him. This wasn't the last time he'd see her. The morning was quiet. A light mist covered the streets outside Jake's home. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the folded jacket on the couch, the same one he gave the alien girl last night. She had vanished before sunrise like a dream that slipped away too fast. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. Maybe she ran because she was scared, he thought. Maybe she didn't trust me. He was about to start breakfast when someone knocked at the door, 3 soft knocks. Then silence. Jake frowned. Visitors were rare, especially this early. He grabbed a metal rod from beside the door, just in case, and opened it slowly. His breath caught. Standing outside was a woman. Not just any woman, but tall, elegant, and clearly alien. Her skin shimmered like silver in the pale morning light. Long white hair framed her sharp face. Her deep violet eyes stared at Jake with pain. And something else. In her hand she held the little girl's fingers. It was her, the same alien child from the alley. But this time she looked different. Clean, wearing a faded coat and not trembling. The moment she saw Jake, she ran forward and hugged his leg tightly. The woman followed slowly. She looked like she had walked through war. Her clothes were torn at the edges. Her breathing was heavy. She had a long burn across one arm, half healed. Then, without warning, she dropped to her knees. Jake stepped forward. "Hey, are you okay?" The woman's voice was cracked and weak. Her words were slow, each one like a struggle. "You helped her when no one did." Jake crouched down. "She was alone. I couldn't leave her." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I searched 3 cities. I begged. They turned us away, and then every time." Jake helped her to her feet and brought them inside. He gave her water. She drank slowly like someone who hadn't tasted clean water in days. "What's your name?" Jake asked. She looked at him. "Raya." He nodded. "And her?" The little girl peeked up and whispered, "Navi." Jake smiled. "I'm Jake." Raya took a deep breath. "Navi told me. You fed her, you gave her warmth. She said you didn't shout, you didn't fear her." Jake sat down, not sure what to say. He had only done what felt right. Raya placed her hand over her chest. "You saved my daughter." Jake looked away, embarrassed. "I'm just a guy who found her crying." "No," Raya said. "You're the only one who cared." That evening, the house felt different. Jake had lived alone for years. Now, 2 strangers sat at his table. Navi ate quietly. Raya only picked at her food. Jake tried to ask questions, but Raya didn't say much. Still, small pieces came out. They had escaped, a prison colony far from Earth. Raya had been a translator. Navi was born in the camps. When the guards stopped feeding them, Raya ran. She carried Navi through jungles, across deserts, through ruined towns. At one point, Raya paused. Her voice shook. "She nearly died. I nearly died." Jake listened quietly. "And then," Raya said, looking straight at him, "she found you." Navi reached out and held Jake's hand. Something inside him changed. That night, Jake offered them his bedroom. He took the couch. As he lay down, staring at the ceiling, he kept thinking about the look in Raya's eyes. Fear, strength, hope, all mixed together. And Navi. That little girl had trusted him with no words, just her presence. Jake had questions. Who were the slavers? Were they still hunting Raya? Was he now in danger? But one thing he knew for sure. He couldn't send them away. Not now. Not ever. The days that followed were quiet, but they were different. Jake noticed the small things first, like how Navi smiled more often. She followed him around the house like a tiny shadow. When he worked in the garage, she sat nearby, pretending to fix tools. She still didn't speak much, but her laughter was real now. Honest. Raya stayed inside most of the time. She cleaned the dishes without being asked. She folded his clothes. She helped him sort parts in the shed. But her eyes always stayed alert, watching, the windows listening to distant sounds. She didn't feel safe yet. One evening, Jake found her standing by the living room window. The light from the sunset painted her silver skin gold. "You don't have to keep looking out," he said. "You're safe here." She didn't turn around. "Safe is not real, Jake. It's a feeling, not a fact." He didn't argue. He just nodded. Later that night, Navi fell asleep on the couch. Her small fingers clutched Jake's shirt while he read her a human children's book. Raya watched from across the room. "She thinks of you as her father," Raya said quietly. Jake looked up. I barely know her. She doesn't care. You gave her something no one else ever did. Gentleness. Jake carefully lifted Navi and carried her to the spare bedroom. He laid her down and pulled a blanket over her. Then he turned to Raya. You both can stay, as long as you need. She stepped closer. Why are you helping us? Truly? Jake paused. Because I've been alone for too long and because I saw a scared little girl in an alley who needed someone. Raya smiled. Small but real. You gave her more than safety. You gave her hope. The next morning, Jake made something simple. Eggs, toast, and warm tea. Raya helped with cutting vegetables. Navi danced around in the kitchen wearing Jake's oversized shirt like a dress. They sat down to eat together, at a real table like a real family. No one said it aloud, but it felt right. One afternoon, Jake decided to repair the broken swing in his backyard. It had been rusting for years. Navi stood beside him, curious. You ever used a swing before? He asked. She shook her head. Want to try? She gave the smallest smile. Jake fixed the ropes, tightened the bolts, and then lifted her onto the seat. He pushed her gently, letting her feet touch the wind. She laughed, a soft, pure sound that made Raya rush out of the house in alarm. But when Raya saw Navi swinging and laughing, her hand went to her chest. Her breath caught. Jake stood beside her. She's never done this before, has she? Raya shook her head. She's never been a child. That night, Raya sat beside Jake outside under the stars. The night sky above New Terra was full of glowing moons and distant ships. The silence between them was peaceful. I always wanted a place like this, she whispered. Quiet. Safe. Hidden. Jake glanced at her. You have it now. She looked away. For how long? Jake didn't answer. He knew the danger wasn't over. The next morning, he found strange footprints near the edge of his property. Heavy. Fresh. Not his, not Raya's, not Navi's. Someone had been there, watching, tracking. He walked back to the cabin, his heart heavy. Inside, Raya saw the look on his face and knew. They found us, she said softly. Jake didn't speak. He simply nodded and walked to the garage. The time for hiding was almost over. The wind had changed. Jake felt it first in the silence. The kind of quiet that wasn't natural. Birds didn't sing. The old trees behind his cabin didn't move like they used to. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Something was wrong. He checked the path behind the shed again. The footprints were still there, heavy, deep, made by boots too large to belong to a child. Or Raya. They circled, then vanished into the forest. Whoever had come wasn't just passing by. They had stopped. Watched. Jake returned to the house and locked the doors. He closed all curtains. Raya was already checking the windows from the other side. They're near, she said. Her voice was cold now. Different. Jake noticed the way her body moved, controlled, precise. Like a soldier. Who are they? Jake asked. She looked him in the eye. Trackers. From the slave guild. They hunt with tech and instincts. They never stop. Jake's jaw tightened. Then we stopped them. Raya blinked, surprised. You would fight for us? Jake didn't answer right away. He walked to the garage. When he came back, he held a long case. He opened it. Inside was an old rifle. Dusty. Cleaned but unused. My father used this on the farms when creatures came too close, Jake said. Never thought I'd use it again. Raya stepped closer. You are risking everything. I already have something worth the risk. From the hallway, Navi peeked out, holding her doll. Her eyes were wide with fear. Jake bent down. Don't be scared. I'll keep you safe. Both of you. She nodded, slowly. That night, the stars were hidden by clouds. Jake kept watch from the porch. The rifle sat across his lap. He wore a thermal jacket and had sensors activated at the edge of the woods. Raya stayed inside, sharpening a blade Jake didn't even know she carried. Midnight came. And then a low sound. Not footsteps. Not machines breathing. Jake stood up, heart pounding. He aimed his rifle toward the forest line. A figure stepped out, tall, armored, eyes glowing red under a hood. Behind him, 3 more shadows emerged, moving in silence. Jake raised his voice. "You're not welcome here," the lead hunter said. Nothing. He just raised a black device, scanning the cabin. Then, with a robotic tone, he spoke. "Target located, female, Class X-12. Surrender or engage." Jake fired first. The shot cracked the air. One of the shadows dropped. Sparks flew from its chest. But the others didn't hesitate. They rushed forward. Inside, Raya grabbed Navi and tucked her into a crawl space behind the wall. "Stay here. No, matter what." Navi's hands trembled. "Mom." Raya kissed her forehead. "I'll come back." She turned and ran outside, just in time to see Jake fighting hand-to-hand with one of the hunters. The rifle was knocked away. She moved like lightning. With a strange spin and flash of her knife, she brought one down. Jake kicked the third attacker into a tree, but the fourth grabbed him. The hunter's claw dug into Jake's arm. Raya screamed and leapt forward, driving her blade into its throat. The hunter gurgled and fell. When it was over, Jake was bleeding. His jacket was torn. Raya helped him sit on the steps. "You're hurt," she said, holding his arm. Jake laughed once, weakly. "You should see the other guy." Raya looked at the bodies around them. "They won't stop, others will come." Jake met her eyes. "Then we make this place a fortress." She stared at him. "You still want us here? Even now?" Jake looked toward the house. Navi's small face watched from the window, full of fear and hope. "I don't just want you here," he said softly. "I need you here." That night, as Raya patched his wounds, Jake whispered, "I've lived in this cabin for 10 years, and never once felt like it was home." He looked at her. "Until now." The forest was never the same after the attack. Jake and Raya buried the broken bodies deep under the roots of the northern ridge. Navi watched from a distance, silent, her arms wrapped tightly around her doll. She hadn't spoken all morning. By the 3rd day, the bird still hadn't returned. Neither had peace. Jake reinforced the house. He set up motion sensors, buried traps, rewired the cabin's power grid to run silent. Raya helped, using strange alien tools she had hidden in a small metal box sewn into her coat. At night, they slept in shifts. Jake on the couch with the rifle, Raya near Navi, a sharp blade under her pillow. Still, the fear never left. It was the 4th night after the fight. Clouds rolled in heavy. Thunder cracked overhead. But the sound that woke Jake wasn't the storm. It was Navi. She was screaming. Jake jumped up, grabbed his rifle, and rushed toward her room. Raya was already there, pulling Navi into her arms. The girl's face was pale. Her little body shook with fear. "I saw them," she cried. "They're back. They're in the woods." Raya looked at Jake, her eyes sharp. "She's never wrong." Jake didn't hesitate. He grabbed his coat, turned on the outside monitor, static. "They're jamming the signal," he muttered. He ran out onto the porch and scanned the trees. Nothing moved. Until it did. A shimmer, like heat waves near the edge of the forest. Then, another. They were cloaked. "Invisible suits," Raya said, stepping out beside him. "Advanced. Expensive." "How many?" Jake asked. She closed her eyes, breathed deep, and whispered, 5, maybe 6. Then the forest lit up, a flash, a burst, then another. Red beams scorched the trees. One of Jake's traps exploded, taking out one of the hunters, its body now visible, smoking, mechanical parts twitching. "They've upgraded," Raya said coldly. Jake nodded. "So did we." What followed was chaos. Jake used the rifle to take out 2 more near the tree line. One tried to flank the cabin, but Navi had silently slipped into the hallway and triggered a tripwire that launched a firebomb from Jake's homemade launcher. The hunter went up in flames. Raya fought the fifth one hand-to-hand in the kitchen. Plates shattered, walls cracked, but she moved like she had been trained for war. Her blade danced, blood sprayed. Jake turned and fired at the last attacker just before it reached Navi. The shot hit. Hard. Silence fell. Only the sound of the fire, burning in the forest beyond the house, remained. Smoke filled the sky by sunrise. Jake, Raya, and Navi stood in the yard, staring at the damage. Part of the cabin was scorched. The garden was gone. The air smelled of fire and metal. Raya leaned against the porch, exhausted. Jake's arm was wrapped in a torn cloth. Navi stood between them, holding both their hands. "We can't stay here," Raya said. "They'll keep coming." Jake nodded, slowly. "Maybe, but I'm not done yet." Raya looked at him. "What do you mean?" Jake stared at the smoke rising into the morning sky. "They think this is just a cabin, a hiding spot." He looked at her, then down at Navi. "But this is my home, and no one gets to take it from me." Later that day, Jake began building something in the garage, something bigger than traps. A signal tower. Raya helped, though her hands were shaking from the fight. "What's the plan?" she asked. Jake smiled. "We call them." "Call who?" "The people who owe me favors, friends, ex-soldiers, mechanics, off-worlders. We'll turn this place into a wall." Raya raised a brow. "And if more hunters come?" Jake smirked. "Then we bury more of them." Raya laughed, tired but honest. "You're insane." Jake shrugged. "Maybe, but now I've got something to protect." Navi peeked from the doorway. "Family." That night, Navi drew something in crayon on a piece of scrap paper. A house, a woman with white hair, a man with a brown beard, and a small girl between them, holding both their hands. Beneath it, in shaky letters, she had written, "My home." Toing. Sky was clearer now. No more smoke, no more fire, but something still burned, quietly, deeply inside Raya. She stood on the porch in silence, watching Navi chase a butterfly near the rebuilt fence. The girl giggled, her little feet skipping through the grass. For the first time, she looked like a real child. Free. Happy. Raya's hands tightened on the railing. Jake stepped outside, wiping grease from his hands. He had spent the morning repairing the cabin's power system. His arms were sore, his back stiff, but he smiled when he saw Navi laugh. "She's doing better," he said. Raya nodded. "Because of you." Jake looked at her. "Because of us." Raya didn't answer. She had been quiet all morning, more than usual. "Something's bothering you," Jake said gently. Raya turned to face him. Her voice was low. "You have given us safety, food, warmth. You've risked your life for us, and still, I'm about to ask you something more." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Ask anything." Raya hesitated. Then she spoke. "In my culture, when a child chooses someone as protector, that person becomes part of the family. By bond, not by blood." Jake listened, waiting. "She sees you as her father, and by law that makes you—" Raya looked away. "Her mother's mate." Jake froze. "Wait, what?" Raya didn't laugh. She didn't blink. "If we follow the old ways, I must ask you to be my husband, or I must take her and leave." Jake stepped back. "Hold on. That's a huge leap. I mean, we just met. We didn't just meet." Raya cut in softly. "You held her when I could not. You fought for her when I was too weak. She sleeps peacefully because of you." Jake was silent. Raya lowered her voice. "This isn't just custom. It's survival. If we leave without bond, Navi becomes an orphan in the eyes of our kind. No tribe will take her. No place will protect her." Jake looked at Navi. She was now sitting in the grass, drawing with a stick. "And if I say no?" he asked. Raya straightened. "Then we disappear before sunset. You never see us again." Jake felt like the ground had shifted under his feet. He walked a few steps away, staring at the hills beyond the forest. He thought of his life before them. Quiet, empty, gray. He thought of the little girl who had first cried in an alley, and now smiled in his yard. He thought of Raya, strong, broken, brave. Jake turned back, and he didn't speak. He just walked over to Navi, knelt beside her, and lifted her drawing. It was another family picture. This time the three of them were standing under the sun. Above them, written in wobbly letters, "My forever people." Jake smiled, his heart full. He looked at Raya. "Tell me what it means to your people," he said. "To be husband and wife." Raya blinked, surprised. "It means we protect each other until the stars die," she whispered. "We stand between harm and the ones we love. We never run." Jake stood up. "Then I choose to stay," he said. "I choose both of you." Raya's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she walked to him and placed her forehead gently against his, a silent vow, a new beginning. That night they sat together on the porch. Navi slept soundly inside. The stars were bright again. Jake reached out and took Raya's hand. She squeezed it once. Firm. Sure. No more running. Jake never expected to live a life like this. He had always imagined growing old alone. Just a man with his tools, his silence, and a cabin full of dust. That had been enough. Until a little alien girl cried in an alley and reached for his hand. Now the house was full of sound, light, life, and love. The sun rose slowly over the hills, casting a soft golden light through the windows. Jake woke to find Navi curled between him and Raya, her tiny hands holding both of theirs. Her breathing was steady, her face peaceful. Raya stirred beside him and smiled, a quiet smile that said more than words ever could. Jake brushed a strand of hair from Navi's cheek. "She didn't have nightmares last night. She knew you were beside her," Raya whispered. They lay there in silence, the three of them wrapped in warmth not just from blankets but from each other. Later, Jake went outside to chop firewood. The forest air was cool, birds had returned, the trees whispered like they used to. As he raised the axe, a voice called out, "Need help?" Raya stepped out wearing his old work shirt like a dress. She was holding a small basket. Inside were tools, nails, and wire. "I thought you didn't like tools," Jake teased. "I don't," she said. "But I like you." They worked together for hours, laughing, arguing about how to fix the fence. Navi ran around them, pretending to be a space pilot. Her little toy stick turned into a blaster. Jake watched her spin in the grass, arms wide, laughing at the sky. "She's healing," he said softly. "So am I," Raya replied. That evening, Jake lit a fire in the pit outside. They sat on logs, Jake, Raya, and Navi, eating roasted vegetables and warm bread. Raya had added herbs Jake didn't recognize. They smelled sweet and sharp. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Jake asked. "From the prison kitchens," Raya said. "The guards made me cook for them. I watched. I remembered." Jake nodded slowly. "And now you cook for us." "For family," she said. As night fell, Navi crawled into Jake's lap, sleepy. She leaned her head against his chest. "Tell story," she whispered. Jake looked at Raya. She smiled and nodded. So Jake began. "There once was a man," he said, "who lived in a lonely house. He thought the world had nothing left to give him. No hope, no love. But then," he continued, "a girl with glowing eyes showed up, crying in an alley. And everything changed." Navi smiled in her sleep. The fire burned low. Raya leaned against Jake's shoulder. "Do you regret it?" she asked. He looked at her. "Regret what?" "Letting us in." Jake looked at the stars, then at the woman beside him, then at the child in his arms. "No," he said, "you're not a burden. You're the reason I remember how to live." He kissed the top of Navi's head. "I didn't just save her. She saved me too." In the weeks that followed, they kept building. Not just fences and walls, but a life. Raya planted flowers by the window. Navi painted the front door blue. Jake taught her how to use a hammer, carefully, with both hands. Sometimes, visitors came, old friends of Jake's from off-world, a few ex-soldiers, some brought supplies. One brought books for Navi. One even cried when Jake introduced Raya as his wife. Time passed, but the feeling stayed. Peace, belonging, purpose. One night, while watching Navi sleep, Raya whispered, "She almost didn't make it." Jake nodded. "I know. She used to ask me, why doesn't anyone want us?" Jake looked at her. "What did you say?" Raya smiled sadly. "I told her, because the one who wants us is still out there. He just doesn't know it yet." Jake pulled her close. "Well," he said softly, "now he knows." And in a quiet cabin at the edge of a once lonely forest, a human, an alien woman, and a brave little girl finally became what they were always meant to be: a family.